Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. So I'm here to talk about operational data and kind of that new frontier that we're now able to explore with the tools that we've got in the BI suite. Really a kind of tactical look at what we have in-house and some case studies from Bosch where we've implemented a number of tactical operational data actions and more to come because I opened the floodgates. So it says up here I'm the manager of business intelligence. I'm out of the Detroit area and part of the overall Bosch family. We are the service solutions, automotive service solutions segment, which does everything that a vehicle needs from a dealer perspective. So we support diagnostics, tools, specialty tools that they need, technical manuals, dealer equipment, and basically we set up anything that they need to repair a vehicle. And that's not just a car. We have numerous brands that go to our aftermarket division, so this would be what you would see in your auto zones. And then we have brands that are also direct to Ford, Toyota, Harley Davidson, John Deere tractors. So everything that has an engine is kind of our business and taking care of those dealers. And usually when I tell people that, they go, okay, so you're looking at data coming off these vehicles, et cetera, like that. And we do have divisions that are looking at that data, but my role is internal to our business customers. So our part of business intelligence is financial data, customer data, and operational data. So the first case study I wanted to talk about is some stuff that we're working on for our shop floor. And I want to give you a little bit of background. Because we have all of these different kinds of things we build for different vehicles, from a tractor to a motorcycle, we don't have synchronous flow in our plant. We don't start something on the beginning of an assembly line and it comes off the end looking like a wrench that'll take something off a tractor. It's going to be very different than a wrench that's going to take something off of a Harley Davidson motorcycle. So because of that, we have to manage this non-synchronous flow. A tool will go from being cut to being sanded to being coated to being shaped and bent and turned into whatever that tool is for that tractor or Harley Davidson. And the goal that they have in the plant is to get this constant work in progress. So no machine is sitting idle, that we have a constant flow to that machine. And that will reduce overall our lead times because we have efficiency going on. And because the jobs have different routings, they don't go from A to B to C, they may go to A to C to D to E, and another job goes to D to C to B. Work arrives at different times. Basically, it shows up and says, the last guy finished with me, here I am to have this operation done. And then there's work at my workstation that I'm going to then depart to another workstation. So we have this concept of things showing up and things going out. And trying to, you can take the first one that shows up and start working on it. Two things show up, you can start working on one of them, and you'll have to make a choice as the operator. So the operators on the floor are the ones making the decision of what should be done next, because they have multiple choices. So they needed some way to switch this around, because when you have a push-based system, you end up with feast and famine. Either I've got 50 things sitting here to do, or I have nothing to do. And they wanted to switch this around so that a workstation that's out there that's got capacity, that's sitting there waiting for work, can raise their hand and say, hey, I'm green, I need to go, I need work. And then the people who are doing the jobs in front of them know, I should do job 2 instead of job 1. So this was done by the lean team. This wasn't done by the BI team. This was a project that came out of the plant, out of our lean processing. And they said, you know, we're kind of like an airport. We got these arrivals, we've got these departures. And we need some way to visually tell that workstation, you know, what to do, that work center. Which one should I work on? Using lean, trying to keep it very visual, something that I can look at a glance, something I don't have to print a report, I don't have to touch the screen. So what we came up with, you know, they came to me with this, and I'm traditional BI. I do financial reports. I do, product line reporting. I can tell you what you're selling to who, but we really hadn't looked at operational data. And this is coming off our shop floor, and that stuff moves, you know, and it moves fairly rapidly. And as a traditional BI person, I would go 3 steps back and go, you know, I can't do that for you. You know, my warehouse loads once a night. I can't, you know, I don't have HANA or a Natuzzi adapter or some other in-memory technology that would let me suck in real-time all of this data. And on top of that, I'm betting there's rules. It's not just going to tell me what's going from A to B very easily. You know, what we've got is routings coming off of bills of materials that say, where does this go next? But being the adventuresome person that I was, and my team looking at me like I'm crazy, I go, well, let's try it. Let's see what we can do. Let's not go out and hire some outside vendor who's going to make promises and spend a bunch of money on in-memory or whatever other solution they would come up with. Maybe something that attached to the mainframe and took a report and put it on a visual. Let's see what we can do with BI. So I have, you know, my source is this shop floor control data. It's basically says this work order has this bill of material and it's currently here and it needs to go here next. And based on different indications of, you know, I've completed this job that feeds back to the system, we know how much work they've done and how much work is remaining to be done, and we know when it leaves that station going to the next one. But all that happens pretty much in real time out there. So what we did was work heavily with the IT group that supports shop floor, and we learned those rules, the rules that were in people's heads, not in any computer system, and said, well, you know, how do we know it goes from A to B and when it's going to go, and how do we determine how much work is left? And we figured that out. Again, great work with the business. This isn't something as a BI person I would know. So those teams figured out what in their shop floor system could tell us all that, gave us the rules, and we created a process that extracts every 15 minutes. So using Oracle CDC, so that's a change data capture that's available in the Oracle database. It will monitor and capture the changes as they're happening in your ERP. And we go and grab that CDC log and pull those 3-4 tables in and apply the rules, summarize the data, and get it to the point where this workstation has this much work, they're working on this production order on this tool. So, and just to tell you, when they told me this and they lured me in, they said, you know, we make thousands of tools at a time. It doesn't move that fast on the floor. Probably if you refreshed it twice a day, it'll be okay. And we tried that, and they said, you know, how about if you go to once an hour? Well, okay, I can do that. And they go, well, you know, we're close, but how about, you know, how low can you go? And that's what we said, well, the job takes about 3-4 minutes to run, to pull in this external data, summarize it up, and cache it into where our dashboards pick it up from. And so I said, well, you know, we can do 15 minutes, and that's where we're sitting now. And that kind of real time is done not within memory, not with HANA, not with all that expense, This was done as a no-cost project. It was my in-house staff, all of our existing tools. So what we did was we created one dashboard, because as you saw back here, it's pretty simple. I'm not interacting with it, I'm not doing all the fancy things dashboards do. There's no maps, there's no geolocation. It just simply says, what do I have coming to me? And what do I have that I need to send to someone else? And what's red in the next work center that I shouldn't work on because they don't have capacity? So I'm going to quickly show you this dashboard. It's not sexy, but the power of this is huge. Or somebody messages me. All right. So again, simple dashboard. From a technology standpoint, what I delivered in visuals is pretty simple, but it needs to be. Because this sits at over 100, I think we may be up to closer to 200 now, different work centers throughout the plant. We didn't buy fancy screens. We used, monitors that IT had back in the storeroom, older computers we were going to retire, because it doesn't have to be very smart to just display this. Now the technology behind this, as I said, we do 15 minutes, we grab it, we put it together, we cache it, and then the dashboard is designed to wake up every 15 minutes and go read that cache. So we never have a time when it's building and not cached, because the building and the caching are separate. So the cache stays until there's like a split second while the cache gets replaced. So very rarely do they go to the well and not find something there. But one dashboard, because all the work centers, it's the same story for each of them, even though they're doing very different operations. Where's it coming from? Where's it going to? Is it a rush? Right now it would say I have a rush, which is my top thing to depart, but it's red in the next work center, 103. I shouldn't work on that. Before, when it showed up and had a big rush tag on it, I would have worked on that first, because it was a rush. So, and then it would go to 103 and sit there. So far better to work on the next one and get that flowing through the plant. Oh, dashboard. And trust me, I know when this goes down. If they have any problems with caching, or they decide to deploy a new version of Internet Explorer, or any of the other fun stuff that can happen. Now we did, as the keynote speaker, we did make sure that the old methods was still out there, that we're not going to suddenly, bring them to a screeching halt if this new visual doesn't work. But the results were immediate. As I said, I know when it fails. Because now they can see where the flow issues were. Before, they'd sit up in a control room and they'd have supervisors running around on the floor, and some customer is calling, going, where's my order? And everybody, though we had computer systems and reports to tell you that, there was nothing super visual, super easy to get that data and know, hey, there's 10 jobs all heading for this one, and they're all going to hit about the same time. So pretty much all that, but the big story here is this was one piece of the lean team. I can't take credit for all of the workflow improvement, but the numbers I got from them was, it used to take about 27 days on average for an order to wander through the plant and get through all of its operations. With this and the other lean efforts, we're down to 10. So huge, huge gain. The goal is to get to 5. I'm not sure exactly where they are with that. those statistics came out probably last year when I implemented this. But we're working on phase 2, because of course, as soon as you open the floodgates. One of the things that we're going to do, and is very close to ready to roll out, is taking the data with steel for building tools. We use hundreds of different kinds of steel, different softness, hardness, durability, and we need them at different times during the process. So if you ordered it all as soon as you released it to the floor, we would have more steel than we could trip over at the plant. So we're very Kanban, we're very just-in-time type ordering going on. But there's still a fine-tuning of if it doesn't need this steel until the second or third operation, when is that operation going to happen? Depending on what job you work on next, it could be 5 minutes from now, it could be 5 days from now. So getting that steel ordering right was basically an oracle that she looked at the crystal ball and tried to make sure that she had the right steel ordered and in process and in the right place, keeping that workstation busy. So we're in the process of taking this data that we summarized up and saying, well, now we can predict what's going where based on these numbers, and using that predictive analytics to drive the steel ordering. We're also going to do some, we're all about KPIs, right? So our next thing is not to just throw away those every 15-minute builds, which we have been doing because it's a lot of data, but we're going to start time capturing it. Haven't figured out what time frame. I don't think I can save every 15 minutes. We're in the process of figuring out what can we capture, knowing how much is at a work center at a given time to trend it. So that's another project that's underway. And then take the data from the floor back to the control room. Right now, I wish I had a picture of our control room. Because they're lean, they had implemented magnet boards. So in our control room, this wall, probably halfway down or better, is a series of magnet boards. And all the work centers are represented there. And they would take the job, they pick it up, and they move it where it goes when the report comes in from the floor, so they visually could see where the work was. So we're going to replace those magnet boards with the culmination of the data that's now on the floor. But what we did was the floor first. So this is me and these gentlemen were talking about strategic versus tactical. We wanted to get the person who's making the decision tactically the information first. So we didn't try to attack the control room first. We said, at the operator, and then we can get feedback from them to say, hey, you got it wrong. Maybe there's a problem with the routing. We always know that routing's wrong, and we ignore it and send it on to where it really goes. So those kind of things flushed out pretty quickly. So that was case study 1. Case study 2 is something that engineering came to me with. And again, it was the lean team, and they had these magnet boards, and that was all going well for them, but they have design centers and engineering prototype shops all over the country. So in front of that design center or that prototype workshop was a magnet board with what tool they were engineering for, John Deere, Harley-Davidson, GM. And they're building those prototypes out, which will be part of the 2015 model year. Great, if you could walk up to the board, you could see it. But if I'm the president sitting in my office in Warren, I don't know what's going on in our California workshop. So what they wanted to do was capture that data on a magnet board. I said, well, I don't quite have optical recognition. I can't quite screen scrape that. But what we found was a hidden source of that data, because the project managers over those tools had to keep track of where they were. And IT didn't give them away. They've been doing it on their own. One guy in Minnesota created an access database for his own projects. And he said, start tracking where they are in the stages. And somebody saw what Denny was doing and said, hey, I could use that. So Denny started sharing it around, and the Access database grew to be their operational data source. Now it's on a network drive, and everybody can get to it. They get to it from California, they can get to it from Minnesota, they can get to it from Michigan. But it's not in any IT system. Then he started becoming, he was an engineer, project manager. He actually wrote pretty good software. He had that engineering mindset, so the way he put it together was pretty solid. Couldn't have really done a better job. I might have used a different tool. But he became a full-time IT person. He started not being able to do his job anymore. On top of that, no one could really take this data easily. I mean, he could make reports in Access, but there was nothing visual coming out of this. There was nothing to say, where is something? Not easy to give to the president or the head of engineering. So what we did was took that Access database, which is sitting out on a shared drive, and twice a day I dumped it into a SQL Server database. And then I created a dashboard that would fulfill two things. One, I was going to do what they had on those public, replace that magnet board that somebody's walking out and moving the magnet with data driven from this database. So we put screens up. And those just auto-refresh, similar to what they do on the floor. But then also, there's valuable data there that we needed to show and we needed to analyze. And they didn't believe me until I showed them. So, you know, it's not about that seeing it. It's about understanding where it is and where your bottlenecks are. So we created the dashboard using our existing tool set again, in-house, no outside money spent. And let me pull that one up. Now this one's a little more sexy. I'm messing this up. Okay, so this one has, you know, again, that public view mode, which we won't go into, and then it has different ways of pivoting the chart. Do I want to do it by the business team? Do I want to do it by the design center? Do I want to do it by the engineer? And hopefully this is actually an offline, not real copy, so I believe I remember what parameters to grab here. I don't know, also one here. Let's see if I can do it by hand. So what I'm looking at is, you know, what business team am I? Am I the Harley team, the GM team, the imports team? And we have each stage of the design process from the point of the project being initiated all the way through to the engineering design being signed off by the customer. And we created this graphic to show where's the work sitting. So right now, in this sample, again, not real data, everything's sitting waiting for quote. So this means that it's sitting with the design engineer who needs to get the quote together, what it's going to cost to build that, material costs. Sometimes we buy things versus manufacture. And then, here, one of the challenges I had was to recreate the tag, because they wanted that tag still, because they were really in love with the way that looked. So we give them a lot of data here in that tag that tells you what project it is, when it's due. Again, it's all faked out with not dates and so forth. But it also had some stickers that said, you know, is this a long engineering or short engineering? Is it starting to turn red? Do we need to worry about it because the customer's expecting it at this date? So we've got, quite a bit of information that's passed on here. And depending on who I am, I'm going to care about different design stages. And what team I'm on, I'm going to care about that. So what they turned, once I gave them the analytics tool versus just the static dashboard, which, there was a way to list all the jobs and you could set it to saying I'm at Design Center 1. When we started looking at the graphs and seeing where was your bottlenecks, we even started saying who was your bottleneck on. I didn't pull it up that way, but it will say, Mike over here is swamped as a design engineer because he's got 10 things on his plate. Whereas Joe doesn't have any work, maybe we can level load from one engineer to another and get them working on it. And some of these engineers are in different locations, so they wouldn't be aware that maybe the guy in California could help them out. So our improvement activity started focusing where the problems were. One thing we discovered, because we work ahead so much, we work into the next model, this model year or next, 2014, 2015. Some people know what they want, and they're very clear cut, and we get a specification for the 2016s, and we whip it through. Well, we had an inline change for this model year that's maybe a little fuzzy, and it gets backed up. So we started knowing, well, is this next year or the year after's work, and maybe they don't need it for 18 months. Well, we whipped it right through the system. It took up all our capacity when things that needed to be done for 2 months from now aren't getting done. So that started coming out. And then we also discovered the black hole was the customer approval. So we get it all ready, we'd spend the money to engineer it, but then it would go into the hole at the customer approval. If we did it too early, they weren't ready to approve it. And they don't have any push to get it approved because they don't need it for 18 months. So you're kind of in the bottom of their pile. So getting it to them at the right time helps, but also being aware, the sales team being aware, hey, you're the holdup right now. We need you to get with customer X, find out if there's any design changes. If they're good with what it is, then we can cross that one off and move on to our next assignment. So that was one of the things that they didn't think was happening that was. There really wasn't a clear pattern there. Next things we're starting to do is the lean team loves this stuff, so they're wanting me to have a change out for this dashboard to start creating some flow charts that shows average lead time through different centers or different tool types, and trying to get some level of cycle time here. It's really hard because it's a little harder to engineer certain tools than others. So, what they've always got back from the engineers is everything's different, it's all variable, there's no way to get averages. But, we're going to try to prove that wrong and see if there's a way to, segregate, type them, and identify. So, those two projects, Conduit and tool development, VMA, and got people thinking. So, of course, before I can finish doing the steel and all the other stuff that I got going on with those folks, the warehouse people called me today. Well, probably last week. And they go, hey, what can you do for me visually to help us do a better job of picking and replenishing our Kanban in areas? Because now we have, somebody's got to go out and get a ticket, and we can see the BEM's getting low, and it'll generate something onto a report that somebody has to go run, and then that guy will go do the picking. But boy, if we had a display that said, what picking was due, and then the guy could walk up with his gun and scan that barcode, which will lock it and say, I did it, because that'll interact with our back-end system, so it won't let the next guy come up and scan and say, at that point it'll say, no, sorry, somebody else is getting that. So I don't have to worry about it on my dashboard, that the next guy's getting it by them scanning it. But I do have to figure out how to put barcodes on the dashboard, so that's my challenge of the week, is figuring out that. We are leveraging the Kanban data system off the ERP, working with that team again to say, where's your data? How can we get it? Is it kind of pre-ready, or do I have to get it ready? And what we're finding out is it's kind of pre-ready, so this actually will be a pretty fast win. I don't know how I'm doing on time. I talk fast when I get going. I'm doing pretty good. So that was kind of it, where we are, and I'd love to open it up to the floor and find out, do you guys have questions, or some situations that you're working with, operational manufacturing, or other industries where you're finding the tools that we have now are able to be leveraged, in a way that nothing in the ERP can do, short of maybe your MRP engine. There's nothing that can quickly process a group of records, apply some rules, and get that analytic view out there that we can use for analysis and predictive. There's nobody else in the company that can do that. The tools are all in our hands. And we really, at least until last year, I really hadn't thought about applying them that way. I don't know if anyone else is starting to apply that kind of the power of your tool set to your operational. So I'll open it up to the floor. Does anyone have questions or some case study, something that you guys are doing locally? Yeah, in the back.
Question regarding your approach on both of these. You pulled operational data and you ran into data marks. Is that your corporate strategy to deal with these situations? Or are you looking at different ways of using the tool set to pull, the BI reporting tool sets?
As far as putting it to the enterprise warehouse versus a mart, is that what you're asking, or?
When you're pulling these into a data mart, and I know a lot of the, let's say, the vendors and providers out here in the hallway will house BI tools that can go get the data where it is. And if you looked at those different types of solutions as well.
Well, one of the challenges, if we go into the data kind of where it is that it's in an ERP system and tends to be scattered across a lot of relations. ERPs, especially ones from the 1980s, love relations. So to get it down to a single table that I can quickly read and put on a dashboard, they have to pull in, maybe 100 tables to pull that together. Could those tools do it? Possibly, but it becomes, you've got to look at those tables, try to gather that up. When you're doing that, you are impacting our operational system when you're grabbing them. And you don't do change data methodology at least again, I don't know the outside tools, but my concern was the change data. So we're leveraging like Oracle CDC to know that the production order has changed. I'm not going in and grabbing every production order, which there are hundreds of thousands of them out there. I'm grabbing the ones that changed. So, you have to have something to compare that to, which is where, my BI suite, my warehousing or marting had the capability to keep what was the current status of them, get those CDCs in, and apply the changes to get that kind of quick response. So, is there a tool out there that probably could do this? If somebody buys me HANA, I probably could do it. To get to more of that in-memory real time. But with the tools, without any investment, and I think on some of the slides I talked about what we use. So we use the SAP data suite. So I have, this is not using SAP ERP though. We use the Bosch ERP in our Minnesota plant, which is where this is at. I do have SAP in Europe, but not here. But we're bringing it into an Oracle data warehouse using CDC, and then we're using the data services from SAP to do the ETL work, and we're using their dashboarding tool, which they change the name of every week. Used to be called Celsius, Now it's called SAP Dashboards. And then, I know. And then we do have one of the partner technologies that allow us to do this caching in along with the dashboard. So it brings the data in using the SAP Business Objects report. It puts it into a cache, an XML cache, and then the dashboards read from that. So that's kind of our technology suite, and I'll get my 10 minutes here. So other questions? Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the design of your dashboard? Because I love the simplicity of them. And can you kind of tell us about the life cycle that they went through and end up with what you have today?
Like I said, the first one, the shop floor one, came to us done. The lean teams had really figured out what's the minimal data that I need at a work center to support what they need. So I really didn't change it much from what they came to me with that drawing. Those were their slides. So that made that job pretty easy. And it was clean, and it didn't break any of the rules, and I didn't want 50 colors, and the fonts were big. We could display it well. For the tool development one, now that one we went through probably 5 cycles on, at least, because they wanted me to replicate this magnet board. So they said, well, just make a magnet board, like use your palette, and then put the magnets all over it, and move them when they move. And we designed that little square, and we put them up there, and we said, well, yeah, but you're going to need to buy a really big TV at Best Buy, because how big is big? 60 inches is going to be enough, and then they're going to get down to this small, and you're not going to be able to see what they are. So that was kind of round one. And we gave them what they asked for, which we didn't think is what they want. So while they were doing that, back to the keynote, had multiple solutions. We were working on solutions that said, you're going to want to analyze this, you're going to want to dice this and slice this, and you're going to want to be able to see it graphed, because you're going to want to be able to see where the buckets are, where are you having your highest volumes, or who doesn't have work. You can't see that from a tag. So we came back and had that solution ready. We actually had 3 solutions going. We had the dashboard we were working on, the original one, that did our magnets. We had put it out to a vendor and said, here's what our customer wants, what can you do? Staying in our technology suite, because I don't want to go buy another tool and try to have my very small BI staff learn something new. They came back and they were using some XML5 technology to do these cool graphics where they if you clicked them, they kind of rolled onto the screen, and it was very sexy. But didn't really tell you anymore. Didn't really let you interact with them. It just looked really cool. And then we had the third piece going on, which was the final dashboard that you see here. Yes?
When software was making a determination of where to do work next, were those rules stored in SAP as well?
They're in the shop floor routings. So
What's the basis of that? What system or tool are driving routings?
well, it's our shop floor system off our Bosch ERP. So within there, you have the bill of material for the item, and then that bill of material is attached to a routing that says it goes from A to B to C, or A to C to
So
D.
it has dates associated with that?
No, the routing just says, when you make this tool, do it this way. There is an average work time per unit. So it takes 10 minutes to do this at this workstation. You send 100 of them there, it's going to be this many minutes. So that's how we calculated the work time, is to take, okay, there's 100 units going to this work center that says its average work time is 10 minutes per. Most of this was available in the shop floor system from their interactive tools, their reports and so forth. So we were able to grab that. How much time is it going to take you to do it at station B? And then it's supposed to go to C. How much time is it at C? And then we pile up all the work at sea and said, okay, well, you got one that's gonna take you an hour, or one that's gonna take you 15 minutes, and one that's gonna take you 3. So your current load, you're at, 4 hours and 15 minutes.
You briefly mentioned predictive analytics.
Mm-hmm.
Will that software at any one point be able to analyze alternate paths and then allow that data to be used in data-driven type decisions? Or
I think that's when we get it where we start capturing the snapshots of where things were at a point in time. I think that is a natural progression. They went this way. What if we rolled the clock forward and we moved them this way? That's going to take some thought, though, and maybe some tools I don't own yet. I know, I don't know how many of you guys are SAP customers. I know the Lumira product has that predictive analytics capability that you can take those rules and push them forward. That would be actually making me think, those aha moments. I think it would be an interesting thing to try Lumira with that. Yeah.
There was a stage where you were making data in Access. What were any considerations of using Hadoop storage in the process when you guys were shuffling between the data where to store it? Were there any considerations to use Hadoop source? It could be any product, Hortonworks or.
Yeah, as far as where to take the data from Access and put it somewhere, we had dumped it into SQL for another reason, for some simple reports we were doing for them. So I kind of had it there. Did we go back and analyze that and say it should go somewhere else? No, it really needs some more work. I will say, again, this was one of those tactical projects that my guys were shaking their heads at me going, we really should take this and take it into a more refined warehouse or potentially other storage. So I think that is someplace, depending on, what ROI we're getting out of it, and if they want to grow it, do we look at that? I have the immediate request to take it and back end it with SQL so that they're not loading the Access database. And what I don't want to do, and I'm not responsible for, is creating all those front end entry screens. That would be a different team. So I'm not trying to take on the front end. I'm out of time. All right. Well, thanks everybody. I'll be around all the